Hello, friends. On air from Nashville, it's me, Ruthe Rosen.
And on air from Seattle, it's me, Tim Tackett. Welcome to the Let It Be podcast. In today's episode, Capture the Guilt, Don't Carry It, we explore the distinction between genuine guilt and self-condemnation, how shame impacts identity, and why guilt often arises in relation to productivity and rest. Today, we sit down with Pastor Scott Heider. We will be sharing tools for naming guilt and replacing unhealthy thought patterns with clarity. This episode encourages anyone facing faith, doubt, grief, or the pressure to always do more, helping to protect peace of mind. So take a moment today to reflect and choose forgiveness over guilt. Good morning, Ruthe.
Good morning, Tim.
Happy Saturday.
Yes, it is a happy Saturday.
Is it? That's good. You had a little difficulty this morning, I think, but you made it. Powered through.
Oh, yeah, I had some technical issues. That's why I know this is going to be an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I feel that too.
Not taking us down. Okay.
So
I'm excited.
Good. Last time we were talking about the feeling of guilt in moments of normalcy, specifically for those that may be experiencing chaos or uncertainty, and then all of a sudden, no storms, calm weather.
Transitioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You and I were talking a few days ago about the different types of guilt and trying to kind of brainstorm what are some things that our listeners or even we go through when it comes to guilt. And you came up with a really cool list that I thought maybe we could just go down and just bring up some...
See what speaks to us?
Yeah, and maybe speaks to our listeners and maybe get a little humor from it as well, just as we reflect on our past life.
Well, listening back to last episode, I felt a little bit of guilt that I felt guilty over being normal. What a great problem to have. But I know there's really deep guilt also. And when we talk about this list, Tim, I think right from the top of the list for me was not being present enough for loved ones. Doing the foundation for so long, I have that guilt. I still have that guilt of, was I enough? Was I there enough for my kids while I was helping other people? So that's something I have to work out.
That's heavy. Yeah. Well, you're here now. You're present now.
I am
so
present.
Happy for that. I saw something on this list, not helping enough when someone was sick or struggling. I think about Dad. 25 years ago, his virus, his condition today is curable, right? Like he would have had no problem. But I think back, like, maybe I could have done more. Maybe I could have done more research or called more doctors or gone here or, could I have done more? So there's a little bit of guilt, I guess.
Yeah, and also when they were here, did we do enough? Could we have done more for them?
I'm excited to ask them questions about, can you define guilt? What does that mean? Why do we hang on to it? We have so many great questions for Pastor Scott.
We had to pull in the big guns for this.
Oh, yeah.
So here's one which that I struggle with because I've admitted it, is resting when others are struggling. That is a big one because you kind of feel guilty that somebody is going through a tough time, and here we are going somewhere fun, going on vacation when somebody that you love is struggling.
Yeah, that can be tough. You can definitely feel guilty about that. And others are in pain, and you need a little moment for yourself. But it's like they say in the airplane, right? You got to put your mask on before you help others with theirs. You're no good to anyone if you don't take care of yourself.
What about mistakes at work, Tim, that affect others? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. I tend to beat myself up if I make a mistake. I'm on my Enneagram, we've talked about this. I'm a strict perfectionist. So I've
ever had to let somebody go and you have to deal with the fact that they don't have a job anymore, or you feel like you let them down?
Occasionally. Usually when people get to that point, though, it's easily recognizable that they've done it to themselves. In our company, we give people a lot of chances and a lot of grace and a lot of time to correct. I mean, when I was teaching, too, there were kids that it's like, gosh, this kid is just really struggling and he doesn't get it. I got 30 other kids this hour that I need to focus on, and it's hard. And so you try not to give 80% of your attention to the 20% that aren't cutting it, and then you miss out on on the others. You know, there's
Yeah.
like people that are not performing that you really focus on. There's people that might be like really performing and you really focus. I guess I should do that. There we go. Really performing. and then you got all these people in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you focus on all these edges, you never get that magic in the middle. You miss the magic in the middle.
What about, I know that, well, I can't say no because I don't know how you feel in your heart, but not praying or attending church enough. That's a spiritual guilt that definitely creeps in, and doubting. You feel like you don't have enough faith, so then you feel guilt for that.
Yeah, I can't relate to that one, but I'm sure you do. If you don't get to church on a Sunday when you want to, you probably feel guilty.
Yeah, you do. And your day always goes better. Always. There's not a time I went to church that I did not say at the end of that day, my day went really good today. And not because I didn't have problems. So, what about survivor's guilt?
Well, can I touch on that? What
Yes,
you said, what gets your day going?
please do.
And we got Scott waiting in the lobby, so we're going to have to let him in quick.
Okay. All right.
On my weekends, if we can get to the dog park, I feel awesome the rest of the day. And I know Bethany does too, because we know we've done good for Gordy. We've gotten out into nature. We've gotten in a walk, our exercise. Gordy's exhausted. The whole day just kind of like rolls, and it's great. And then next we're going to the soggy doggy, and bathing him, and then we're getting home and he's taking a nap. We just sit there in our chairs and we're like, man, today's a good day.
Yeah. I think I can totally relate to that. That's how I feel when I attend church.
That's a normalcy, right? That's what you want.
That's my normalcy, yes. I'm excited to have our guest in the studio. So let's
go get him.
Let him in and welcome.
Scott Heider. Well, Scott, thanks for joining us. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I have not. This is the first time.
Okay. We do not consider ourselves professionals by any means.
Hey.
That's good, because then you got a non-professional to join you. So,
You're going to up-level our podcast. I can feel it. Your bio says, we just celebrated 25 years of marriage with your wife, Jamie. Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're the parents of 3 adult children.
Yeah, a 24 and 22-year-old. They just happened to both get married in the last 2 months. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, back-to-back weddings. And then my youngest is a sophomore in college. He's
Awesome.
20. Yeah.
Awesome. Life is good.
It is.
Also, you're the founding and lead pastor of the Grove Church in Liberty Hill, Texas. Mm-hmm. And so you started that church.
I did, yeah. Yeah, we just crossed 11 years.
Okay. And you are the executive director of Known, a global discipleship and leadership ministry. Tell us about that. What's that?
Yeah, we come alongside like local leaders, in I think right now we're in 7 or 8 countries, and just really kind of help them with their vision and what they're trying to accomplish by providing some leadership development, how they in turn can raise up leaders, as well as discipleship on how they're leading and shepherding and kind of raising up believers so they can stand on their own 2 feet. So we do that in a lot of different ways, but that's kind of the common mission of the organization.
Wow, that's cool. So it's mostly like faith-based leadership then?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's all faith-based.
That's really cool.
Well, I'd like to say that it was a sad day when you started your church, because that meant that we lost you as our pastor at church. You were and are such an amazing speaker. You have said things that have resonated with me and I've kept for so many years, Scott. And they say that it's encouragement from others that affirm us, that we are to raise each other up in Christ. And you did that for me. I truly believe that you kind of pushed me over the edge. I shared with you an excitement. I think I'm supposed to start a foundation. After losing Carla, you were one of the pastors, the 2 pastors that did her service, 3 pastors. And you said, oh, I'm so glad to hear this. Mike and I have been praying that you're going to do something with this. And you just gave me just the permission to fly. So thank you.
Oh, wow. It was my privilege. And it was definitely a bittersweet time to leave and to start a new venture. But sometimes when goodbyes are hard, that means that you had good relationships, and people make the place. So God took us from one place to the next, and we have some fond memories and some cool things being able to walk alongside folks.
You were in Chino Hills at the time?
I was, yeah. I was serving as an executive pastor at the church that we were both at. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big move to go out to Liberty Hill from Chino Hills.
Yeah, it's not where
next.
Not the dot on the map that I thought like, hey, this is exactly where I'm going to go. But my wife's from Fort Worth, and I did my undergraduate in Texas, and so we thought, hey, we're going to move to Austin. So we were downtown Austin for 3 or 4 years until we moved out, I guess, to the country a little bit, get a little more space, a little more breathing room. And this is where we've been for, the last 11, 12 years.
Well, one of these days I'm going to get to Austin.
Yeah, you need to come.
I'm going to be in the first row, Scott. I'm not going to sit in the back row. I'm going to sit in the first row.
Okay.
Yeah. Hear everything, and maybe just a few funny faces too. Yeah.
There you go.
Just to see if I
sure.
can throw you
I would
off your
expect
game.
That. Yes. I'm up for the challenge. Let's do it.
Well, Tim and I have been talking about, I know that I've shared with you, I'll share a little bit further if somebody's listening to our podcast for the very first time. Our podcast is based on learned wisdoms from my book, and taking those learned wisdoms and having conversations, real conversations, to bring hope and encouragement to others, because we realize that we are not the only people that are struggling, and we know that we can make a difference if we can just get stories out there. We have been talking about guilt. That's why we needed the big guns. We need you, Scott.
Okay, we'll see.
So, and not that I think of guilt and I think of you, because that's not it.
I'm guilty all the time, so I got a lot of personal experience to share. So,
last episode we talked about my guilt of shutting the foundation down and still feeling like I had more to give, but I was feeling guilty that I was tired and it was time to transition out. And there are so many other forms of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we're kind of just, scratching the surface a little bit now. We started out the day trying to find relatable things that people might feel guilty about as far as like relationships or parenting or self-care. And I don't know if Ruthe was able to explain more about the podcast in general, or what the mission of the podcast has been for Let It Be, or if you've been listening at all to some of the episodes.
I did. I listened to a few, and had some time with Ruthe as she unpacked kind of the heart behind it.
That's awesome. Thanks for listening.
Our goal too with you, Scott, is that you want to come back periodically with us when we have some tough questions. Tim has asked me some tough questions, and if there's time at the end of this conversation, I'd love to ask you to answer something that's not based on guilt, but something Tim asked me that I thought would be better off coming from a pastor, not just me.
Got me nervous now. Well, I was thinking that we could start off, if you want to read the learned wisdom that we've kind of based this whole Gift of Normalcy series on. You probably are familiar that Ruthe wrote a book.
I am.
Never Give Up.
Actually, Scott's mentioned in it.
Scott and Mike.
That's right.
It's funny. She referred to you as Scott, not Mike, for quite a while, and then finally became just Scott. So you've graduated to Scott.
Just
Oh,
Scott.
do we miss Mike?
We do miss Mike.
If you find yourself experiencing a rare moment of normalcy, don't feel guilty. Soak it up and enjoy it, and give yourself the gift of not worrying about tomorrow. What does that mean to you, Scott?
I think guilt is, I think we call a lot of things guilt that maybe are not necessarily guilt. And, there's pressures and stuff that I think that we have, and usually we may not know the root of. Guilt kind of at its base level, it comes from an offense, right? So your guilt comes from an event. It comes from a specific thing where you wronged somebody, or you wronged the Lord. And so I think there's good convictional guilt, But then there's times that, like you do feel guilty, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, of just feeling guilty about resting, feeling guilty about unplugging, and that might more speak to the guilt is there, but where is it coming from? Is it from an offense? Did you do anything wrong? And a lot of times it's not because you did anything wrong. It might be based off of like a value. Like if you really value productivity, if you're surrounded in a culture that is a hustle culture, it's kind of funny because you kind of have different streams of culture today where it's like, those that are trying to work as little as possible and sit as much time on the beach. And then the other side of it is the hustle culture. If you're not getting up at 4:30 a.m. and working out and, conquering the world by 6, then you're lazy. And so I think there's definitely some values that will drive whether or not you feel guilty or not. So for instance, if you are a productive person and you're busy and you're resting, you'll feel guilty on that because you feel like you're wasting time. It's because you value productivity more than you value rest. And I think so. I think a big part of just when you do feel guilty is like capturing it, of going like what exactly am I feeling and why am I feeling this specifically, instead of just sitting in the feeling. Because I do think there's a lot of different routes. There's a lot of different ways it can go.
You said capture. I like that term. My coach has used name it to tame it. Where you gotta just figure out what it is, how is it affecting you emotionally, where is it, and then identifying like what's going on. So I like that capture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you said pressure, not knowing where it comes from, and then capturing it. So what is a process I could use if I'm feeling guilty and I'm trying to capture it, but I don't really know where it's coming from? How do those two worlds connect?
Well, I mean, I think it's a matter of when you capture something, you got to sit and meditate on it. That's something that we don't do a whole lot today, is just sit and think about something for very long because we have so many different disruptions, distractions, instant answers, from AI and everything. Like we don't want to sit in things very long. And I don't think that's that leads usually to the process of really kind of getting to the depths of maybe why you feel a certain way. This is probably a little bit more complex sometimes than just like, hey, I found the root of it. It could be much deeper than that. So for instance, starting, or closing the foundation, as you mentioned, and then feeling guilty about that. It's like, well, is that guilt come from a false responsibility? Do you take on a Messiah complex, a Savior complex? Like it's up to you. Like, and if you don't do it, well, then it's not going to happen. And to some degree, it may be true in a small way. It may not happen in some ways, but at the same time, it's like we take on responsibility that's not necessarily ours to take on for the world. And so I think of just sitting in those moments and trying to understand what specifically am I feeling guilty about? What am I not doing that I feel like I should be doing? Or what am I doing that I maybe shouldn't be doing? And getting to the root of it. And, a lot of times then that goes a little bit deeper. You peel back a layer and then you go a little bit deeper, especially if, a lot of times on how we grew up and, for trying to perform and ultimately digging into our identity, like where do we find our identity? It's something that happens like you see, like especially like professional athletes, their entire life they get defined as a basketball player, a football player, then they retire. Yeah. Of course, you see this in the marketplace too, and all of a sudden it's like, man, it's a personal crisis. It's an identity crisis because you're like, man, my whole life I've been leading, I've been playing, I've been doing this. Now all of a sudden I got to redefine who I am, and so you can have a mixture of all of those things happening all at once. From, hey, I'm stopping something that I've been doing, so I have this habitual habit. I found my identity in it. At the same time, what you were doing specifically, Ruthe, was of such great value and care for people that you feel like, well, now I'm not caring for people, and so you could have a little bit of a savior complex. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
No,
I think we all.
I'm taking it in. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do in some.
Give it to me.
In some capacity, right? In some capacity, because it was a real one-to-one value on the care that Let It Be was giving specifically. And so, man, you bundle all of that up, and you can walk away and go like, man, what just happened?
But it is a process, and I thank you for acknowledging and affirming that it's real, and it takes a while to get through. But there's also the guilt, like you said, about capturing and setting with. And I'm guilty because I asked God for rest, but yet I was complaining that I have too much time on my hands. Wait a minute. That means I wasn't receiving his gift.
I think that's a part of it too. But also, I mean, it's not just, I mean, you're running for a long time, and then all of a sudden you stop. I mean, I experienced the same thing. We're just super busy. I mean, busy now has become kind of like this. I don't know if people brag about it, but it's funny. It's like, especially folks in our church will be like, hey, how's it going? It's like, oh, I'm just busy. It's like, rarely do you ever find anyone to be like, yeah, really, nothing's just going on. I'm just hanging out. It's usually you're running from one thing to the next. Yeah. So part of that is like, we're also being conditioned. You're being conditioned to move. We're not conditioned to sit. We're not conditioned to meditate, to think long about things. We're not conditioned to carve out. Even with rest, it's funny. Like even on a weekend or you have a day off. I know especially when our kids were young, it's like you're running just as fast, sometimes faster, because you're running to games, you're running to their activities, you're running to all of those things. And yes, it's a break from the daily kind of work life. Then all of a sudden you're back in, and like, really, I mean, you can go years without actually ever really resting your mind, resting your heart, and ultimately getting to a place where you rest your soul. And I think that's a hard thing to like step into.
Do you struggle with
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah. So like for me, it's funny. Like I can't go like on vacations. I can't go somewhere and sit. Like it's really hard. It's like if we're going to be at the beach, well then I want to be in the water. But we usually go to the mountains now. Just try to get out of Texas heat, and so we're hiking and doing something, which is good. But it's getting away from the phone. It's getting away from really just the responsibilities, I think, that clog my mind. And it takes me probably a good week before I feel like I can kind of come down. And then it's the second week, if I can get that back to back, then I actually could.
That's rare, I bet.
Yeah, could rest. And so, yeah, I think we're conditioned. So that's an element too.
What about the guilt that's related to shame? Or is the shame self-induced?
Well, I mean, I think shame usually comes from guilt initially. So guilt is again as an offense, right? It's something specific that typically you've done. Guilt and shame, guilt can be a good thing, right? It's like if you're not doing something that you should be doing, or there's something that you did. Guilt in a real positive way, like that convictional guilt, it'll lead you to seek forgiveness, to say that you're sorry, to bring about restoration in a relationship that's broken, to get you back on the right path. I mean, all of those things that I think are good things. So I would say generally that kind of guilt is good, and it would lead you back to positive things. But then shame goes a little bit deeper than that, because shame starts to attack your identity. So shame gets to a place of where you feel like where someone might think they're worthless or they're not of any value. And usually shame leads to despair. Shame leads to a hopelessness. And basically, I think when people get caught in shame, they get caught, meaning they get stuck. And shame never typically leads to any place that's good.
Yeah, I'm starting to think, as I hear you talk about guilt and then shame, it's kind of like the anxiety, depression world, kind of a similar caught in the middle. And I caught the word forgiveness in there. And I think that is something that is very hard for people. Like, even if you're able to name it, tame it, figure out what it is, I think it's that forgiveness piece that is so difficult for others. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure every single one of us have had a shame or an issue where it's like, God, that was really, it eats me up. Where it'd be like 15 years later, it's like, God, it gets me. So,
Are you talking
how,
specifically about like forgiving yourself?
yeah, yeah. I think it's harder for us to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive others. Personally, maybe that's just a personal thing, but how do you get through forgiveness, or how do you help others?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think initially it's like when you receive the forgiveness of the Lord, specifically, and you realize that there's nothing that you could do to make amends. You can't make it better. I couldn't earn His forgiveness. It really is just this grace that He gives in forgiving me, full well knowing that I'm still going to make mistakes. I'm still going to fall short, and I'm going to still hurt the relationship. So, I mean, Him having that foreknowledge and yet still extending forgiveness. It's that kind of forgiveness, I think, that empowers me to then forgive other people, and so I think it's one of those things that, of course, I'm not far from perfect and broken. What I find is, at least in forgiving others specifically, I'm a very of a pretty good memory. I'm a pretty visual person, and man, I replay the tape all the time. So for me, I've never experienced to where, I've forgiven someone the first time, on little things, of course. It's not a big deal relationally. But let's just say, a big offense against me, where like I did it one time and then that was it. I was done. I was like, yep, totally forgotten. Usually it's like I forgave him in the moment. And then maybe a day later, all of a sudden I replay the tape. Man, I just get hacked all over again. I'm mad, I'm frustrated. And then I'm like, man, I forgave him like 3 days ago. I got to do it again. I gotta do it again. And so it's like I have to replay the tape on my own forgiveness until it actually sticks. And so my motivation behind that is in forgiving someone is not necessarily like their confession, their remorse, their penance. It's based off of what God has done for me that really empowers me to be able to do that. Now, if someone is sorry for what they did, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to get there. But that usually is what I find is I have to keep doing it until it finally sticks. In fact, there was a time where I wrote a list. It's funny. It kind of sounds bad at first, but I wrote like a hit list. I put hit list on it for forgiveness. My wife saw it. She's like, what is this? And I'm like, these are some folks that, man, they wronged me in different ways. And like, I still have some bitterness towards them.
Wow.
And
that's good, Scott. Wow. I mean, I want to make a hit list.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny. I forget who said it. It's an actress, I believe, who said it. But like, bitterness is. Oh, I'm gonna totally botch the quote, but it's something like bitterness or unforgiveness or bitterness is swallowing poison and expecting the other person, to get sick. And and I think that's kind of what I found. It's like, man, it wasn't impacting the other people, but it was definitely impacting me. And I was like, okay, Lord, I can't continue to live with this bitterness. I need to release it. I need to let it go. I need to let them off the hook and just continue living life. So part of making the list was my commitment to pray for them. And so, when you start praying for someone, especially someone that you're frustrated with, it's amazing how your heart and mind can start changing. Not for like, God smite them, you great smiter, it's, but more so just like, God, would you just bless them, man? Would you bless their marriage and their family? Would they thrive in what they do? And so, I found my heart changing for those people. And eventually, folks started coming off the list.
Off the hit list. I found the quote. It's holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
Who said it?
It actually doesn't say who
I think it's like Carrie Fisher. If I'm going to just throw it out, I think it was Carrie Fisher.
Oh, wow.
Maybe that's where I initially heard it come out of her mouth. But
on this hit list, because I really like this, because I'm going to make one. And did you ever do it again, Scott? Have you done it since you did that? And do people who were once off your hit list, did they creep back onto it?
Yes and no. So, I mean, obviously, as you get into forgiveness, it's a couple of different things, right? I mean, you have people that maybe wronged you once and they're not really in your life anymore, right? I mean, those are the folks that you release, and then you don't see them crossing boundaries anymore. But then there's people that are in your life and they're not going anywhere. And you find that there's ways that hurt you, especially if they continue to hurt you in the same ways over and over and over again. And then they do maybe a confession and it really becomes meaningless. That's where you can forgive, but then you also have to set up boundaries. And so, you don't keep stepping into harm's way, and expecting a different result. And so I actually have that's a running list. It's just in the back of, kind of my journal that I have, and so I can see folks I've scratched. It sounds like it's bad. It sounds like I have this really long list, but I just spent some time to really kind of dig in and to do that. And but I just found that it was when you start praying for people, and that was the point of it. It was going like, okay, like I keep replaying the tape on this person or this thing keeps popping up. I'm just going to start praying for them, and I just feel like God changed my heart towards them, and it was. Obviously, it's not overnight. There's folks that are still there, but yet it changes my perspective on them. So,
and I
love rewiring your brain to think a different way about them. And so that takes.
And I love that as a pastor, you didn't call it my prayer list. You call it the hit list.
Oh yeah.
And this is great, Scott.
It's the hit list for sure. But
Tim,
going back to like forgiving yourself. I mean, I think.
Yep. I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, because I think the reality is that a couple of different things. I know that if the Lord can forgive me, then I have to step in and go, well, then who am I not to be able to forgive myself? Man, if a good and holy God can forgive me, that should give me release from that, as well as to believe ultimately what Jesus has done, right? So if Jesus, going to the cross, paying the penalty of my sin, my debt, that means that he also carries the weight of my guilt. And so part of it is it challenges, gosh, what do I actually believe about this, right? Because we always just say that, surface level, oh yeah, I believe that. And then you get down to the brass tacks of things and you're like, yeah, practically I don't, because I'm still not believing this to be true for me, or it may be true for you, but it's not necessarily true for me, and I don't release myself. And so part of it is believing the promises of God over how I feel, and continuing, I think, to lift that up to the Lord. I also think that it's a great way for the enemy to attack our own identity, because again, I think when you get continually going back to your failure, I think there's not only just kind of from the enemy attacking that, because then you don't believe who God says you are in him. But I also think, of course, there's other people in our life that we wronged. They haven't forgiven us, and they want to continue to remind us of how we wronged them. And they do keep a record of wrongs, and they use it as ammunition. And so it's one of those things where, especially if you're continuing to be in a relationship with someone, it's tough to be reminded of a failure, of something that you did. And so again, I would just say it's like a continual process of, I got to continue to take it back to the Lord and seek what ultimately is true about me, what he says about me versus how I feel.
So let me dive into this just a little bit more, because I don't know if Ruthe has told you that my belief system, I am an agnostic.
Okay.
And so when I hear what you're saying, I have to remove certain parts to make it relevant for my belief system. And so what I'm hearing, something that would be good practice for me or any other agnostic listener, is removing the part of God forgiving me. If God can forgive me, then I should forgive myself. So if I'm removing that, does it seem harder for someone without that belief system to just jump straight to forgiving themselves? Or perhaps there's, because the other thing I heard was you condition yourself, you live in it, you go through it, you process it, and then you come back to it and you live through it again, no matter how painful it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's going to come down to your identity. It's going to come down to how you see yourself. And so, so from from a Christian perspective, it's going to be, hey, there's, Romans 8 says there's no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. And so that's ultimately what's happening when we don't forgive ourselves, right? We're self-condemning. And so not having that as a backstop, because that's kind of that voice that's always speaking in regardless of how I feel, then ultimately what your backstop would be like, where do you find your identity and who do you say that you are? And where does failure fit into that identity? Where does shortcomings and disappointments, how does that impact your identity? Because I think there's another part of it. It's like, people would say like, hey, okay, failure is only failure if you don't learn from it. And so if you learn from it and you're able to grow and progress and move forward, but to get stuck in that cycle, right? It's a condemnation cycle. And that's a destructive cycle. I think regardless of what you believe, it's definitely a destructive thing, because basically you're defining yourself by an event. You're defining yourself by a shortcoming. And it's hard, especially when you start talking about things. I get to talk to all kinds of people and different seasons of life, and believe a lot of different things, that walk through the doors of our church. And I hope that our church is a safe place for people to ask questions, to explore their doubts, and to not necessarily have to be convinced, but to be, to belong and be part of the family, and to work it out freely, within our church. And so, so it's always interesting, to hear, especially folks that, say they had a marriage that fell apart and it was their fault. And so now they're dealing with, a broken family. They got to deal with their kids, that are being shuffled back and forth. And that's not a redo, right? That's not well, I can go back and just fix that. That's the reality of like, okay, I have to acknowledge I broke this. I have to live with the repercussions of it. And I'm going to be continually reminded of those repercussions as these kids continue to get older, and just that way of life.
Doesn't that then turn it into a regret?
It does turn into a regret. And again, regret could be one of those things that lead to condemnation, right? And then of course that's that cycle that just goes back into that. And I think regrets, like we all have regrets. And regrets again could lead to positive things, or they can lead to really negative things. And I think it's how you act on them. And that's why going back to capturing it, and not just, I don't know, just your default response to it. Because typically a default response usually is not a good, healthy response.
Is there one guilt that seems to be a bigger common thread within your church that you often have to counsel people through or pray for them because of this kind of guilt that happens? What is that, if so, that you see pop up more and more?
Off the top of the head, I would say probably the most common I deal with is people feeling like they're not good enough. They're not performing well enough. There's other people that are great Christians, but they're not. I think it's one of the things that is most misunderstood about the gospel, and it's just so countercultural, right? It just doesn't make any sense really in our world when you have the Father that sends the Son to take our sins. So all the laws, everything that we are supposed to obey, so all the ways we are supposed to perform, we fell short. So he comes and he performs perfectly. He did what we couldn't do, and then he takes all the penalty for which we fell short and violated the law, and he takes the penalty for that. And so there's nothing that you need to do because he did it, and he freely gives it grace. So grace is such a foreign thing. Grace always has strings attached, even when we talk about it in the best of relationships. There's always a little bit of string, right? There's a little bit of performance. It's like, hey, meet me in the middle. you need to meet me in the middle, and I'm not going to go all the way over onto your side. So when you come back to church life and you talk about grace and you're like, hey, you just need to just receive the Lord, usually people are be like, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Like, what hoops do I need to jump through? How do I be religious? And even when you just say like, hey, no, it's actually about receiving it. That's why you receive it with joy. It's kind of funny I tell this to our church all the time. It's like a lot of times Christians, they're some of the most moody, angry, kind of people, right? And you go like, why is that? It's like this religious treadmill that people get on, and it's exhausting. And they feel like, they're trying to perform, and they realize, which shouldn't be a shock, that they can't be good enough. And yet, some way, they just think like, no, I'm going to turn inward. It's one of the reasons, and I think one of the big ways at which I think people criticize the church is how the church can turn inward on itself. Meaning like we just care about ourselves. We get a little holy huddle. It's a little bubble. And we're just going to work on just trying to be good. How can we become gooder, within our lives? And the whole point of the gospel is, well, you can't be good. So to receive what Jesus has done, what that should do in us is that then should breed joy. It should breed, grace and forgiveness that we've received. And so what ends up happening in obedience is that not that we're not supposed to be obedient and we're not supposed to work towards that, but there's a very big difference between obedience that comes from I have to versus I get to. Really big difference when it comes out of obligation and people are exhausted and I have to do this versus joy and gratitude. And I think when it comes off of joy and gratitude, that's contagious. Like people get attracted to that. But not to the other side of it. It's kind of funny when people are miserable, like they're Christians and they're miserable, and then they're like, hey, come follow Jesus with me. And someone's like, you look pretty miserable. I think I'm going to stay over here. Versus I think somebody that I think really is living into that. So coming all the way back around, I think people feel really guilty because instead of just hearing like, hey, receive this is what God has done. Somehow, even though I could say that as clearly as I just said it, they interpret that as you need to work harder. Mm-hmm. You need to work harder. You need to perform more. And they see how they fall short and they live with a guilt that won't go away.
What's interesting about what you said is about the moody Christian. Yeah. The person who says, hey, come follow me with, let's go find Jesus, mm-hmm. right? And sometimes I think that type of person can be easier to associate with mm-hmm. as a non-believer than someone who seems to be very happy and like, come with me. Look what Jesus has given me, and it's like, it can be very standoffish and it shouldn't be.
I'm not meaning like a weirdo. Like I'm not meaning like someone that's like, hey, like way over the top. I mean like a joy that's like, so joy is one of those things that like circumstances may not be good within their life, and yet there is a peace, there is a hope in them. It gives like a steadfastness, a steadiness about them that I think that part of it is attractive. They may not actually
confidence.
They might not actually be happy, but they can still be joyful. And mm-hmm. I think there's a difference between the two. As happy is that emotion side of it, and joy is that constant hope, steadfastness, mm-hmm. and an outlook about the future.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Wow, I could just listen to you all day, Scott.
I am so curious about people that don't feel guilt. Mm-hmm. Like people that just constantly do crappy things. And it doesn't have to be like big things, like unfaithful to their spouse. It could just be like, like there's $20 on the ground and I'm going to pick it up instead of like, hey, is this yours? Is this yours? Who does this mm-hmm. belong to? Like people that just don't have that moral compass. Yep. I've said it before mm-hmm. and just it confuses me.
Yeah.
Because when I feel guilt, it stinks and I don't want to feel that. And it's like, you did something crappier than I did and you don't even feel guilty about it. Mm. That's me being judgmental, which is wrong as well.
Because you don't really know if they feel guilty and they having restless nights. They just want you to think it's not affecting them.
Maybe. I mean, would they continue to do crappy things?
Yeah. So like when you feel guilty about something, like why is it that you, like, say, not, you pick up a $20 bill? Um, what would lead you to then try to find the owner of it?
Well, it's if I drop 20 bucks, $100, a dollar, I would want someone to be like, "Hey, man, you dropped that." That-
Yeah.
and then I don't know, it's like a reciprocated thank you. I really appreciate you. That's very it's very honest of you. I mean, we had a story on a previous episode where a company sent me something for my truck, an expensive part. They sent me two, and one of my buddies was like, "Oh, you can send it back and ask for your money back and keep the other one." And I was like, "That is not what I'm going to do." And I went out of my way to notify the company and let them know, like, "Hey, you sent me two of these. This is really expensive." And they took care of everything, right? I'm not expecting anything in return, but it's just it. Like, I would want someone to do that same thing for me. But, am I expecting too much? I would expect everyone should act that way, but they don't. And so, like that, if I did that, if I kept that part and asked for a refund, I'd feel guilty. I'd feel like I did a pretty crappy thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like, because you have a standard, right? So there's a moral compass is based to a standard, and you have to get into, okay, where does that moral compass come from? And generally, humanity, has a pretty similar moral compass, and then of course you have an outliers to that, and so there's a disassociation from that standard, which could be all kinds of different reasons, why they don't seem to have that standard, and they don't feel guilty, whether it's, they could be narcissists, they could be psychopaths, they could just simply not care about or be perceptive about the feelings of others, and be ultimately self-centered, and it's about them. And of course, I think we all have that to some degree, but obviously some can have it more than others. But that golden rule, which you communicated, is like you want others to treat you the way that you would treat them, and do that fairly. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see just folks that don't necessarily have that moral standard, and how they don't get convicted of it. And partly sometimes people just aren't even aware. I mean, you also can have that where there's just a lack of perception completely.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and I think for myself, the more I read the Bible, the more my moral compass gets better and better and better.
Yeah, I mean, the standards of Scripture, obviously, which is integrated into a majority of our laws on which we operate as a country. The point behind it is protection and provision, right? It's like, it's to protect you from things ultimately that would harm you or harm other people, as well as to provide, right? It gives a baseline to providing good relationships, good boundaries to relationships, good provision for communities and how they should operate. And so I think all that's been tested, especially just recently within our culture, of how people want to redefine that standard. But usually, I think oftentimes when people want to redefine that standard, it's just because they don't want to be held accountable for it. They want to be outliers, which is always interesting, because you find folks that they want to be able to do whatever they want, but they still want people to abide by the standard, that would best serve them. And so it's a little contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another kind of guilt that I personally struggle with, and that is spiritual guilt. And what I mean by that, Scott, is that one of the things that when I let go of the foundation, I struggled with, am I letting God down? So it's a whole struggle, spiritual battle. Maybe that's what it is. Completely different what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm not making sense. But I think that going back to what I'm saying, how I struggled with it spiritually, was I sinning against what God was giving to me? What was I not appreciating the gift? Was I not fulfilling my purpose? Like, that guilt set in. So that's what I'm kind of getting to. I don't always have a good way of articulating what I'm feeling in my heart, because it's kind of big. that spiritual guilt that I feel.
Yeah, there are times that we're supposed to do something, continue to be faithful, and we stop, and that guilt is the conviction of the Holy Spirit, to be like, hey, you gotta keep going, and especially if you feel like you kind of have a call on your life and you continue to move. But then there's other times that I think that we might just feel guilty for stopping, but it's not necessarily the Lord. I think so often we do things, and it's this catch-22. I mean, I think does the Lord lead us to do things? Absolutely. Is it only one narrow path? Sometimes. Does God sometimes give you 3 doors and go, hey, well, which one do you want to go through? Any door you go through, you can honor me in it. There's some freedom in this. He's still God, and he's a lot bigger than us. And I think the reality of thinking that it's like in our hands all the time, we might elevate maybe our role a bit more than what we need to. And acknowledge that, again, that Messiah complex, that Savior complex of going like, no, I got to keep doing this. And, I think you have to sift through all of that and really, really discern why it is that you feel.
I don't like sitting.
Sorry, I know you probably don't, but
No, that's that hustle
It's the whole-
culture
it's
right
the-
there you were talking about.
I don't like to sit.
It sounds like pulling it back to identity and that self-condemnation and really
Yeah.
kind of pushing through, Ruthe, what maybe it's that self-inflicted pain. I like the 3-door example.
Yeah,
And
that was
you
great.
can, any chance you can educate me, I love it. So 3 doors, but you said you can honor me in either way,
Yeah.
no matter what door you choose.
Well, I think sometimes, as we read through, I know a lot of people, they read through the lens of Scripture, and you did cross like these really specific characters in Scripture. And it's like, the burning bush, and Moses is going to go and do this whole thing. And all of a sudden we go like, well, I must be like Moses. I'm looking for my burning bush. Where is it? And you're like, well, you're not Moses. And you're probably not going to get a burning bush. And yes, I think there are times that God specifically calls you to things. But then there's times, again, I just think there's freedom of like, I can honor the Lord in and everything that I do. That's what I'm supposed to do. And so, there are times I think where you're going like, I want a specific pathway, and God gives you, there's a few options. And you know what? And I can honor him in all of those things. And I think if you take one step forward and you have peace, then you can continue to take steps forward in that. And I think we make things a lot more complicated than what they need to be.
I think that you have brought some really incredible clarity with that 3-door analogy, because oftentimes something comes up in prayer and then something else comes, so then you start doubting and you say, well, then that must not be right, because why do I feel this? And then wait a minute, I thought I had it and now I feel this. And I love how they can all be right and they can all honor God. And I think that's really something to hang on to.
Yeah, doubt's not a bad thing. I mean, doubt means you just have questions, right? It just means that you need to. There needs to be some more investigation, and that could lead to really good things.
Yeah, well, and even if, Ruth, remember we talked about bad gifts. Even bad gifts are gifts, so, take it for what it's worth, and how do we learn from it?
How can you tell the difference when somebody's struggling with guilt or it's unresolved trauma or grief?
Well, I mean, real, like, directly, guilt would be tied back to an offense. So something wrong, that somebody did to someone else. I think, grief, trauma, could it be self-inflicted? For sure. Oftentimes it just happens to you because, we live in a broken world, and it doesn't discriminate on what you believe. It comes your way. Now, can grief kind of trigger it? Absolutely. But I think the difference is, on where you go with it, is that, again, I think when you are feeling guilty because of an offense, it could lead to restoration, forgiveness, good things. I think when it's grief and trauma, it needs to lead to seeking comfort, and asking the Lord for comfort in the midst of that. And I think Again, capturing it is really, really key.
I love that too. You've given us some really incredible takeaways. I mean, how many times have we heard the word capture?
Yeah.
But now it's a whole different meaning, Scott. And to be able to capture that, and instead of pushing it away and not dealing with it, instead sit with it.
Well, sometimes you don't realize, like
that's a whole different-
you give your thoughts, or you give other people like so much power over your life. And it's like, somebody's rude to you, and then all of a sudden, like, it just maybe puts you in a tailspin, and that person is in your head, like they're taking up space in your head all day. And you're like, I just gave that person all that power over me all day long. That's ridiculous. And so I think with other people, it's a lot easier to see, but then you think of thoughts, and then you have to go like, wait a minute, like, these thoughts, are they true? Are they right? Are they accurate? Are they going to lead me ultimately to where I want to go? And if not, then I need to capture it, and to make sure that I'm not doing that. Like, just had to look it up real quick. Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. It actually says, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And it's one of those verses where I think sometimes where you can capture a thought, and you go like, it's kind of almost like a little matrix you could take it through. It's like, I mean, is this good? Is this excellent? Like, should this be something I'm even dealing with? Is this going to propel me forward? And if not, well, then I need to discard it. I need to let it go. And letting it go means that you're trying to then replace it. I think that's one of the things sometimes with thoughts too, specifically, is that we think of like, just stop thinking that. I remember my youngest was...
Oh, I like that. Letting go doesn't mean... Say that again, what you just said, Scott.
It's replacement. It's not just stopping,
letting
something.
It go.
When my youngest was like 5, I remember having just thoughts, and he'd be like, I just can't stop thinking about this. And, it's not like, well, so often we're like, well, just stop thinking that. It's like, well, how do you do that? It's a replacement. I got to replace it with something else. I got to think about something else. So when I do start thinking about, ultimately, that thought, I need to like have a trigger to where I go, okay, I gotta pivot here. And you're going to probably have to do that a ton of times before all of a sudden it's like that thought goes away, or it's just a quick replacement, and you don't let it take up space uninvited.
That's that rewiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Rewiring. Yeah.
Yeah, that can be difficult to do. It's funny. A lot of the things that we've discussed today, my coach brings up a lot. So it's interesting to hear this repeated in different ways.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. Ruthe, you got me on the edge of the seat here. I'm still dying for you to ask him the question that I asked you.
Well, you asked me several. I think the one that comes to mind is completely off subject, and that's the intention.
Okay.
But it's okay. I definitely see where we could have you back if you'll come back and join us when we get into our learned wisdom and we're talking about forgiveness. I think that there's going to be many topics where, and I can't wait till I actually hear it, and I know I'm going to hear it one day. Tim is going to beat me to the punch and say, let's call in Scott. Yes. Can I get an amen? Right? I just know it. Mm-hmm. But I think what happened is when Tim and I first started, Tim would ask me questions and I couldn't always have the right answer. And then I felt like I was there's that guilt. I'm going to let God down if I didn't have the most perfect answer, so I can't answer him. And I knew, sometimes I know how I want to answer, but it's not always biblically correct. But then again, God didn't call me to be a pastor. He called me just to be Ruthe Rosen. So he said, do you think that Carla's an angel? Because of him not understanding the difference between earthly angels and heavenly angels. And him and Carla had a really beautiful relationship. So, and I don't want him to not see Carla in this beautiful angelic way. But my answer was no, I don't think she's an angel. So could you bring some biblical clarity to why I think that, Scott?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously there's good reason, I think, why people would like to think of those that have passed as angels. Of course, I think people have different versions of that in their head, but somebody that's still looking, that's still engaged from a spiritual perspective, looking into this world. But when it comes to angels, so angels in kind of the created order of God is angels are lower than human beings. So human beings were made in the image of God. And so we share some attributes, and then some attributes we don't share with God. And so, when Carla passed, that she went into the presence of the Lord. And so sometimes, as hard as it may seem, is that a lot of times when someone passes, we're like, oh, I know they're looking down on us. And the reality is that they're not. And in one way you go like, and why would we want them to? Why would we want, like, now they're in heaven and they're looking down into a broken world and they're seeing suffering, they're seeing evil, they're seeing people that they love walk through hard things. And yet they're supposed to be in this place of joy. It's like that doesn't reconcile, versus to be in the presence of God where they're experiencing Him. Faith is not necessary because they get to see Him face to face. And they're whole and they're restored, and she's healthy, fully healthy. And so angels were created as ministering spirits to the Lord. And so they do His bidding. They do His work. And so it actually says then kind of in the end that we will judge angels. And so we're kind of positioned higher than angels. And so it's one of those things often, like, my guardian angel, and it's a common thing, and it usually comes from a really good place. But actually, Carla is made in the image of God. She's not an angel. She's in the presence of Him, and she's not out working for Him right now. She's enjoying Him. I don't know if that helps.
So was that a better answer, Tim? Was that a better answer?
No, that's great. I love that explanation, and I actually didn't know that angels were lower than people. Makes sense when you say like they're in the service of the Lord differently than we are.
Yeah.
So, Tim, I love when you have questions and curiosity, and we didn't pull in the big guns for nothing. Is there any other questions that Scott could bring biblical clarity that maybe you've been wondering or thinking about, or is this too much God talk in one day?
No, this has been great, and I do want to have you back on future episodes, Scott. Ruthe, I know, is hopeful that I will have a relationship with God and in the future, and
You will.
as an agnostic, I don't believe, but I love the history. I love the knowledge. Seeing what it does for her, for those around me that do have a relationship with God. I mean, it's not that I'm opposed to it. It's just that I don't know. And so, when I try to bring the agnostic view, I've got my friends who are like, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what she's saying. Or they'll say like, what the heck were you talking about? And she resonated more with me. Like, it's just been, it's been awesome. So to have you on here, Scott, has been great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't have any zingers. I know.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to have a couple zingers, but this time.
No.
Because you just get lost in your word, and that's why you're so gifted at what you do, Scott. And Tim and I had talked about talents and gifts, and you are talented as a pastor, but you're also been gifted to use those for God's glory, and it's very evident. And I have a question. I don't know how to ask it so it doesn't come out wrong. So I sin all the time.
Okay, you're in good company.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
me
going
too.
to be honest.
Me too. Yeah.
I've been wanting to ask you, how often? Like, how often do you catch yourself sinning, Scott?
Like every day. Yeah, every day.
Like, we have to put on our armor, and it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Is it like that even with the pastor, that you feel like you're constantly sinning?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, what's a sin? Give us a sin.
What's a
you don't
sin?
have to give the details.
Impatient.
Oh, gosh.
Getting impatient with my wife.
Not Jamie.
Yeah, and what?
She's too perfect.
Well, she is. No, that's one of the problems too. It's always my fault, by the way. Not that she says that, but usually it's always my fault in an argument. Getting road rage, frustrated at somebody on the road. I think one of the, those are like,
But you don't use the fingers. You don't, like, not that sending. You just, your frustration.
yeah. Well, you know what? If I did do that, then all of a sudden I pull up and it's like, oh, they go to our church, or something. It'd be, no.
So speaking of the...
Yeah, no, we all sin. I think there's the obvious stuff. There's obvious things that we all do. We all fall short. I think the more subtle ones are not being dependent on the Lord, being self-sufficient, just not being reliant, just kind of doing it on my own power. So that's something that's usually continual. But, it's funny is that being a Christian doesn't mean you don't sin. It just means you're aware that you are sinning, that you are falling short. And I do think that, you start to grow in that. And hopefully, we sin less and less as we grow in our relationship with the Lord. But the whole point of being a Christian is not that we're good. It's realizing that we cannot be good. And that's why we're reliant upon Jesus.
So many incredible takeaways.
And Tim, I'd love to talk to you about being agnostic on another time, and love to dig into that as to how you got there, and enjoy those conversations.
Yeah, I would thoroughly enjoy that.
Yeah.
Provide a scripture, but today we want you to give us. Do you have a go-to scripture? Or is it a scripture of the season? Or what is something that we can share?
The scripture du jour, we've been calling it. Okay.
So a passage specifically, there's quite a few. Let me pull up Psalm 86. So Psalm 86, verse 11, it just says, "Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. I give thanks to you, O Lord, my God, with my whole heart. I will glorify your name forever." So right now that passage is, I think the Lord's been using that with me in just realizing how easy it is my heart to be divided. Just my heart to go in a lot of different places. And so that's King David just asking God, "Hey God, I obviously can't do this on my own. I need you to unite my heart so that I'm focused solely on you." So that lately has been the go-to verse.
You said it was Psalm 86?
Psalm 86, yeah. Psalm 86, verse 11 and 12.
Okay. One of the other parts of this podcast is she brings scripture. I appreciate you bringing that. I bring music, and I love music, so I always bring a song, try to tie the theme in with a certain song. We do have a playlist on Spotify as well, so would love to hear from you if you brought a favorite song.
I do love music. It's funny. I always don't know titles. I'm not a titles guy.
That's me.
So I listen to everything from like classic rock to 90s. 90s rock. Just it's when I grew up. I would say, like right now, a song that I have been listening to it's called Echo Holy. It's by Red Rocks. Right now is one that I feel like is I've been sitting in for a little bit, so it's just helps me refocus on who the Lord is and who I'm not.
9 people.
Yeah, I think they're out of Colorado or yeah.
And we're going to add knowntoday.org on our Let It Be podcast website. Scott, is there anything as we sign off for today's conversation?
I would just, on the topic of guilt, for those that are in this season, I think one of the things that's so important is to not let shame drive you from not inviting other people, especially not inviting the Lord into it. Meaning, like, if you're walking around with guilt and you're struggling with things, one of the things that so often happens is people feel like they're the only ones that feel like that way. Something's wrong with me. Instead of inviting good friends into it and then giving them permission to speak some truth into your life, maybe some things that we so easily forget, and asking their help to pull us out of it, to not struggle alone, to not do it by yourself. And that invitation, I think, is really important, and not just to sit there, because that often leads to despair. And I know the Lord has much more for us than that.
Such wise words from Scott Heider. Scott, my heart is exploding with love and joy. I feel like we went to church a little bit. I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for saying yes, and love to your family and your new growing family.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, thank you both for having me. It was great. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Wow, Ruthe, what a
Wow.
guest. You were right. Scott brought it. He was what'd you call him? The big guns.
The big guns, and you can see why I also said the day he left the church, it was a sad day. Wow,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
listen forever. I didn't want it
know.
to stop.
I know. I had to do a time check, and I felt bad because I thought, man, selfishly, I want to go for like another hour. Get him back.
Oh, yeah. Well, since he's never done podcasts before, he might have liked it so much he's going to say yes to so many that he won't have time for us. So we need to get him back sooner than later.
I mean, really, he should start his own podcast.
A lot of churches do have their podcast, but
Yeah, he'd be
yes.
great.
he's
So-
so down to earth.
And very patient. Like you could just see him really being present in the conversation and listening, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, so when he said he loses patience, I'm like, really?
You do? What does that look
Oh
like?
boy, he has not seen my version of losing patience.
Well, what's something that you took from it? Like top of mind, like what really resonated with our conversation?
Well, thanks for asking. And I think for me, Tim, is that my guilt is making me feel stuck. My guilt is weighing me down. I think that my guilt is more self-inflicted and that I need to spend some more time with God to release it, because trying to control the outcomes or thinking that I let God down when that's unrealistic, and fear of letting people down. All these things, I think that it's definitely self-imposed guilt. So,
Yeah. It takes time too. I mean, it doesn't happen right away. It's that rewiring that we're talking about. It's like practice.
yeah. Thanks for asking, though, Tim. What about you? Do you think there was something that stood out, or your takeaway instantly that you're walking away with, besides the big old list I think we were both writing down?
Yeah,
Boy, there's a lot there.
we were both furiously writing things down. I the capture it part really. It's something that I've been working on over the last year. Is I notice an immediate reaction to something, like whether it's guilt or defensiveness, and then taking a moment to recognize, like, where is that happening in my body? How am I reacting? Why am I reacting? And he called it capture it, which I liked, and I think much like your practice, it's something that takes time, and you have to actually think about it. It's kind of like you have to consciously notice it, which can be very hard.
Well, when that happens to you, when you feel that, do you try to get it out of your head, or what do you do with it?
Yeah, I sit with it, and he had mentioned
Capture
that too.
it.
Like you capture it, you sit with it, you process it, and you really what you're doing is rewiring your reaction. And it's like, if someone used to blame me for something I didn't do, I'd become immediately defensive and like, how dare you? Or, I didn't do that. And now it's like, why do they think I did that? How am I reacting? How can I react more positively? Just being more curious.
When did you start seeing it that way?
Just in the last year. I still will catch myself in moments where I'm like, I didn't effing do that, or calm down, Tim. Just
Stems from trauma? Do you think something has happened to, like Scott said, that
You're going
it's
deep.
often, I know, but he also
love it.
said that guilt comes from something else. So when you have a tendency to be triggered, what is causing you to be that sensitive to blame?
Yeah. Well, I know exactly why. And it's funny you said that, because I actually wrote down what he said. He said, guilt is tied to an offense against others, and trauma is something that happens to us. So I know that when I was growing up, I was a little poop. I was a bad
You were
bad
busy.
kid.
You were
I was
busy.
busy, but my bad was different. Like I wasn't stealing TVs or cars, right? Like I was shoving cat food into my neighbor's mailbox because I hated him. Like that kind of stuff, you know? But wow, what a bad kid. But then when I got to like middle school, ninth grade, I was like, this is stupid. I want to get good grades. I want to be good to people. I want to live a good life. And I started to turn my life around. But I still had that reputation of being a poop. And so when I got into like early high school, you know, like all the administrators just they didn't know who I was or what I was doing. They saw what I did before. And so when I would get blamed for things, I got blamed for stealing $20 from I think it was like my fourth grade teacher's purse. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. But they treated me like they already knew I had done it.
Guilty first instead of innocent until proven guilty. You were guilty.
Yep. And I think that's carried with me because I still try to be good as much as possible and good to people. And
So do you think that that is self-imposed guilt?
yeah, it's trauma, right? It was something that was done to me, but I also built that reputation on my own. So I feel guilty for about the bad things that I did. Like, hey, Jim McQuaig, I'm sorry I put cat food in your mailbox. Honestly. Like,
Do you feel better now, Tim? Jim, I'm looking at him. He sincerely means it, even though he's laughing right now.
I don't think his last name was McQuaig, but I know his first name was Jim.
So I think that we can both say we took a lot away from this episode.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to go back and listen to it. This might be one that I actually put on repeat. And I think that as we wrap up, you always leave us with something to think about.
Two things. I want to highlight his nonprofit again. I think
great.
it's so
Thank
cool.
you.
Knowntoday.org. And just leadership, really leadership development in our youth around the world, like wherever. Like I want to encourage everyone to go to knowntoday.org and really take a look at that nonprofit. But as for that question that you're asking me about, what guilt are you carrying right now that you no longer need to hold on to? And how can you replace that with joy?
Until next time, goodbye, friends.
Thanks, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Did today's episode give you a little boost of hope and encouragement right when you needed it? If it did, we'd love it if you'd hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe even share it with someone who could use a little light today. For extra content and more from this podcast, make sure to follow us at Instagram at letitbe.podcast. And remember, there's still beauty unfolding in your story.